Hello everybody, it's Glitter Informer and welcome to the episode of Hirogaru Sky Pretty Cure where Sora finally gets to go to school with Mashiro. Mashiro tells Sora she looks great in her new school uniform and Sora blushes. We're only 15 minutes past the opening logo and we're already getting lesbian subtext between the two. Just kiss already. Anyways, the bird is on top of the house as usual. The bird will be important later. It won't be too much longer, I swear, okay? Just as Sora and Mashiro are about to leave, Sora becomes worried about what would happen if everybody at school found out she's from Skyland, but Yo-Yo and Mashiro give her encouragement. So, this means Sora's going to try extra hard to do the bare frickin' minimum and not bring up Skyland, right? Surely it's not that hard, right? Okay, so Sora is now being introduced to the rest of the class as a transfer student from overseas. All you have to do now, Sora, is not screw this up. Don't mention you're from Skyland. Don't mention you're from Skyland. Don't mention you're from Skyland. She mentioned she's from Skyland. My god, this is going to be a permanent character trait for her, isn't it? And when one of her classmates asks her where Skyland is, instead of catching herself, she digs herself deeper and cheerfully states that it's in another world. You idiot. She doesn't even realize that she's failed at her one job until Mashiro brings it up to her. So Sora's in shambles now and tells everyone, forget what you all just heard, I don't actually live in Skyland. Fortunately, the teacher comes in for the save and says that according to Mashiro's grandmother, Sora's from a country in the Scandinavian peninsula. So I guess everyone's meant to believe Sora was so nervous on her first day that she mispronounced the name of her own home. Okay, question. Why didn't Yo-Yo brief Sora on this made-up origin before she headed off to school? You'd think it would be helpful for Sora to be able to study up on Scandinavian culture beforehand so she could do a better job of pretending to be Scandinavian instead of Skylandian. Besides, wouldn't coming pre-prepared with an alibi lessen her chances of blurting out that she's from Skyland? This whole thing is so idiotic. But the idiocy continues. Because Yo-Yo never told Sora about this backstory she's supposed to have, Sora doesn't even know what Scandinavia is, so she says, yeah, I'm from, Skylandinavia. And every single one of the students in the classroom swallows her lie, hook, line, and sinker, even though Sora and Mashiro couldn't be looking more like they're trying to hide something. You're telling me that not a single one of these middle school students is aware that there is no such country as Skylandinavia? One of the students even compliments Sora on her authentic accent, even though she sounds no less Japanese than anyone else there. Another one of the students asks Sora to say something in her super authentic accent, but a third cuts him off by saying that maybe Sora is shy. Sora, who has had enough of this conversation, shouts enthusiastically that yes, she is a very, very shy person. And with that, this contrived mess of a scene draws to a close. Before we move on, I wanted to talk about a few details brought up in this scene that will be important as this episode and the rest of the show continue. First of all, Sora and Mashiro are both students in Class 2 too. The first two means that they're second-year students in middle school, meaning they're around 14 years old. The second two means that they're in the second class for second years. Judging by the signs in the hallways, there are at least 4 different second-year classes. It's interesting that they aren't in Class 2-1, since according to TV tropes, it's typical for the protagonists of an anime to be in Class 1. Then again, this doesn't seem to be typical for Pretty Cure. Second of all, although we're shown a bunch of students in the classroom, this episode mainly focuses on Sora, Mashiro, and 3 other guys. Though these 3 guys aren't named in the episode itself, they do have pages on the official Hirogaru Sky Pretty Cure website where their names and voice actors are listed. First, we have Tsumugi Nakata, voiced by Haruka Shamoto. Second, Rui Yoshi, voiced by Ai Ishikawa. Finally, Asahi Karuizawa, voiced by Shotaro Uzawa. Oddly, Uzawa's surname is spelled differently on the site than it is in the credits, on his Wikipedia page, on his MyAnimeList page, and on his Twitter account. I think the Hirogaru Sky website has a typo. It's understandable though, since both spellings are pronounced the same way. Third of all, Sora looks funny in this shot. It's not relevant, but I just thought you'd want to know about it. Let's finally move on, shall we? Since Sora obviously can't be trusted to regulate what she says, she decides that the next best thing is just to try to keep her head down and not stick out. That way people won't talk to her, and she won't talk about Skyland again. So in class, when the teacher is talking about idioms, and he asks if anyone happens to be familiar with the phrase, "A journey of 1,000 ri begins with a single step," Sora stops herself from raising her hand, even though Mashiro taught her it back in episode 4. But then we get to PE, and things start going pear-shaped. See, there's a race, and Sora's trying to aim for the middle of the pack even though she could easily win. But then, past the finish line, she sees that a student is bleeding. Without thinking, she runs as fast as she can to see if the girl is okay, and it turns out she is. It's just a scrape. But whoops! Sora accidentally set a new record for running. And it doesn't stop there. There's an activity where people have to jump across a sand pit, and Sora again tries to do a middling performance. But Asahi, who happens to be standing right behind her, sneezes, and it startles her so much that she accidentally does a flip midair. And then, there's a ball throwing activity. Sora tries to throw the ball a moderate amount. But then, Tsumugi, Rui, and Asahi start cheering her on, and Sora gets all pumped up and says, "Yes, I can do it!" And she throws the ball really far. I don't get how that one was supposed to be an accident. It wasn't like she was startled or anything. She could have just chosen not to throw the ball so hard. Anyways, the ball goes off the school grounds and hits Kabaton in the face. We cut to after PE is over, where it turns out Sora broke literally every single athletic record in the school entirely on accident. Now Sora's freaking out because now everyone thinks she's weird, and they might figure out she's from Skyland because of it, and if that happens, nobody will be her friend. But it turns out that being the athletic star of the school actually helps Sora make friends. Who would have thought? The Tres Amigos from earlier come up to her, and they're super impressed. Asahi even asks Sora to show him how to do a backflip sometime. Sora is delighted, and she agrees. As the Tres Amigos head off for lunch, Mashiro leads Sora up to the roof of the school and shows Sora a cherry blossom tree that's been there ever since the school was built. It turns out that just like Sora, when Mashiro first went to this school, she was really nervous and couldn't connect with anyone there. But then she went up here and looked at this beautiful tree, and it gave her energy. After that, she was able to relax and make friends with people. Mashiro reminds Sora of episode 4 when Sora said that Mashiro was good just the way she was. She encourages Sora to take her own advice and act more like herself in class. Honestly, although this episode got off to a rough start, I really am enjoying the rest of Sora's hijinks as she gets used to being in school and deals with her own insecurities, and I love how Mashiro supports her friend and calls back to previous episodes. Even though I didn't like episode 4, there were good moments in it, and the part where Sora told Mashiro she was fine as she was one of those good moments. Overall, the fact that Hirogaru Sky is interconnected and constantly calls back to itself is one of the things I like about it. Sora takes Mashiro's words to heart and goes back into the classroom. Everyone's eating lunch, but she asks to interrupt them in order to redo her transfer student greeting. She writes her name on the board just as the teacher did for her before. But this time, one of the characters in her name is reversed from how it's supposed to be. I think it's a really neat touch. Even though Sora's studies really hard, she's still new to the written Japanese language, so she's going to mess up sometimes. Sora tells everyone that she's not actually a shy person, and that she was just trying not to stand out in order to make friends with everybody. But now she wants to tell everyone her true self. She's a hero in training, so she works out a lot and is good at athletics. She tells everyone that she wants to be friends with them. And everyone claps. They're all super happy to have her as their classmate. Asahi comes up with the nickname Hero Girl for her, which is interesting because, number 1, Hirogaru sounds kind of like Hirogaru, which is hero girl in a Japanese accent. And number 2, the phrase hero girl already appeared in multiple episode titles, including this one. It's neat that it's now an in-universe term as well. Also, Tsumugi says that they're already Sora's friends, which naturally delights Sora. But all is not well at Sorashido Private Academy, because it turns out there's another transfer student. He has a mohawk, and he's eating all of the food in the cafeteria, leaving none for the other students. Obviously this guy is Kabaton, which begs the question, how is it that literally nobody in the entire school sees an anthropomorphic pig and thinks anything more than, wow, what a horrible transfer student? Between this and the udon guy from episode 5, I'm starting to think that maybe in the universe of Hirogaru Sky, anthropomorphic pigs are just a thing on Earth, too. Sora, a far cry from her idiotic episode 4 self, instantly realizes that this gluttonous mohawk guy is Kabaton. That doesn't make up for her being an idiot at the beginning of this episode, but oh well. Anyways, they go out of the classroom and confront him. Turns out, after he got hit by the ball Sora threw, he followed the ball and ended up here at school. So now, Kabaton knows where Sora and Mashiro go to school, meaning he could just show up here and attack them at any time. I sure hope the show doesn't completely forget about this. Anyways, Kabaton turns the cherry blossom tree into a Ronborg. Even though the Ronborg is outside and Class 2-2 is inside, the entire class decides to evacuate the room. I guess they think they've got a better chance if they make a run for it and leave the campus entirely? So, anyways, Sora and Mashiro transform, even though they're out in the open. Sure, there isn't anyone else outside, but they're surrounded by windows and who knows how many people are looking out at them. We're shown that Class 2-2 is evacuating, but there are other classes. You're telling me that there isn't a single person in the entirety of Sora Shido Private Academy who saw Sora and Mashiro transform? Alright then. Also, it's the same stitched together sequence as last time with more focus on Sora than Mashiro. Again, I guess it makes sense since this is a Sora-focused episode like last time. I am delighted to report that the drop in fight scene quality last episode does not stretch into this one. Not only is the fight longer, about 2 minutes instead of 1 minute and 15 seconds, but way more happens in it, and the animation is really dynamic to boot. That being said, it is weird that the Ronborg ends up smashing Pure Sky into a wall and Pure Prism through a pillar. It's been established in previous episodes that although Ronborg are capable of giving the Cures a bit of a challenge, they can't actually lay a finger on a transformed Cure unless they're super beefed up like in episode 5. But Kabaton didn't do anything special with this Ronborg, which you can see because he's not skin and bones. So why are the Cures suddenly struggling so much more? My best guess is that this Ronborg's sheer strength is to make up for its inability to move. Sure, it can twist around and move its arms, but it can't walk, hop around, or fly. It's stuck where it is. Pure Sky and Pure Prism use this Ronborg's weakness to their advantage. They run circles around it until it and Kabaton get dizzy. Then, Pure Prism uses projectiles to blast a huge chunk of the Ronborg's petals away, leaving a good part of the tree bare for Pure Sky to punch. This knocks the Ronborg over and onto Kabaton. Kabaton's barely able to squeeze out from under the Ronborg in time before the girls end the fight with Updraft shining. We get to the end of the school day. As 2 of the background character students walk home from school, they confirm that they did, in fact, see the pretty cures as they were fighting. So maybe Sora and Mashiro should be more careful where they transform next time. But it's still pretty good for the 2 of them because the Tres Amigos show up again, and they invite Sora and Mashiro to walk home with them. Now that Sora's made new friends, the episode ends. Also, the ending cameo for this episode is Cure Prism. There are 73 cures from past seasons, 71 of which you haven't used yet, and this show is probably only going to run for 45 to 50 episodes, and yet you're wasting time showing us characters we've already seen instead of past cures. Why hype us up if you're just going to let us down? What's even worse is that Walking on Sunshine, one of the mods of the Pretty Cure Wiki, has said that Cure Precious and Cure Summer are going to be the only 2 past Cure cameos in the entire series. I don't know which source she's getting this information from, so hopefully it turns out this is wrong, but if so, this is a massive disappointment. This is supposed to be the 20th anniversary of Pretty Cure, and this is all we get? Compare this with Happiness Charge Pretty Cure, the 10th anniversary season. In that show, every single episode had a different cure from a past season appear before the opening theme. It was awesome! So when Hirogaru Sky teased past cures appearing in the ending themes, it was only reasonable to expect it to happen for every single episode here, too. It's just a huge shame that it isn't happening. So that's the episode. There were a lot of nitpicks I had, but really the main issue I had was the first scene with Sora in school, where she idiotically blurted out that she was from another world for the umpteenth time. That running gag is getting really old, but at this rate, I'm just gonna have to accept that it's part of her character. It's a shame because before this episode, Sora was my favorite Pretty Cure ever. From episode 1, she grew on me very quickly. But this episode made me realize that it isn't just occasional out-of-character episode moments like in episode 4, where she's an idiot. Being an idiot who doesn't know how not to say the most obviously wrong things is just part of who she is. What's especially annoying is that just like in episode 4, this episode could have worked with the exact same story beats without having Sora be an idiot. Even if Yo-Yo and Sora had rehearsed Sora's Scandinavian alibi beforehand, pretending to be from a country you've known nothing about for most of your life is very difficult, and it would be very reasonable for Sora to slip up. What if when Rui asks what country Sora is from, instead of Sora blurting out that she's from Skyland, Sora tries to say that she's from Scandinavia, but because she's so nervous, she forgets how to pronounce Scandinavia, and everything goes downhill from there. People would be more likely to assume that Sora has a stutter or is just really nervous than that she's just making up her entire backstory. Then the rest of the episode could continue as normal. It's such a shame. If you get rid of that one awful, contrived scene, the rest of the episode is really good. Sora's over-the-top antics as she accidentally sets all the athletic records are super entertaining to watch. Mashiro's interactions with Sora continue to be super sweet. And the fight scene in this episode was really good. Definitely an improvement over last time's. I really want to give this episode a thumbs up because all that's holding it back is that one scene. But that scene is there, so even though this is better than episode 6, it is still ultimately just okay.